here we go. Hello. Welcome to our special Jasper's Game Day edition of Storyteller's Chronicles. I am your host, Steve. My pronouns are he, him, and for the next hour, I'll be chatting with Satine Phoenix and Jamison Stone about all things storytelling and TTRPG. We, along with many other streamers, are raising funds for Jasper's Game Day, so please donate if you can at the link in the chat. All donations go to fund suicide prevention initiatives, and we are honored to be part of this event. And now, on to our guests, Satine and Jamison. Can you please introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what you're currently working on?
Hi, I'm Satine Phoenix. I am obsessed with Dungeons and Dragons so much that I've created a lifestyle slash career out of it.
I'm Jamison Stone. I similarly am obsessed with gaming, TTRPGs, video games, fantasy science fiction, novels, graphic novels,
And Dungeons and Dragons.
and also Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes.
I don't limit myself only to Dungeons and Dragons, but I do love Dungeons and Dragons as well. But yeah,
A little bit of everything?
a little bit of everything, just gaming in general, and
Just don't tell Dungeons and Dragons that I also do other things.
Oh my. Scandalous interview already.
I know, right?
You are both working on the Sirens Battle of the Bards. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, Sirens Battle of the Bards is a 5th edition campaign and setting set in this artistic city of Salvata. And it's a city made by bards for bards and also their friends. It's a place that is full of culture and art. So it's not just for bards, really. It's actually for anyone who wants to be in this kind of city. It's 10 districts on top of one another. Each district was built 100 years after the other. And to celebrate the things that you have to go through as an artist and the culture had to go through and overcome to become the great city that it is now. The city is an example of the hero's journey. And yeah, my character Volanya invites you in your party to become one of the bands, not necessarily performers, but one of the bands in her spy network to infiltrate the city and overcome the issues that the Emerald Cabal are creating within the city.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that sounds awesome. Like, I kind of want to play it right now.
It's really awesome. We're really excited about it.
And what inspired you both to start the Bard's book?
Well, Jameson had done the Warlock book, and also I've been running Sirens for 4 years on the Dungeons and Dragons Twitch, and that was Sirens of the Realms. I took it under my wing, and now it's with me. It's just Sirens. And when we met, we knew we wanted to work together because we love spending all of our time together, and all we do is create. So he's wrapping up uh, the Red Opera and thinking, what are we going to do next? And I was like, well, I wanted to do something. And so it was a natural fit for us to do this, thebardbook.com.
Yeah, yeah, it was fun. Red Opera was a great exploration of warlocks, and I think that warlocks are super unique and fun and innovative class that I think has been kind of under leveraged a bit. People just didn't. I don't know. I don't think that they were necessarily hated. They were hated maybe by clerics, but they weren't really explored fully. And so it was great to lean into warlocks in a warlock ruled city. The same with bards. I think that bards actually kind of have gotten a little bit of hate. And unjustifiably so, for what the class can be when done well. And so we want to give people the opportunity to kind of lean into kind of a expanded vision of what bards can be as artists, not just your minstrel, singer archetype, but there's a bunch of different ways to play a bard. We have a bunch of different subclasses that allow you to kind of flesh out different versions of bards. And if you don't like bards, that's totally okay. You don't have to be a bard to enjoy this campaign and setting. Salvata is, although a city of artists, there is also many things for non-artists to do in this location. And so, yeah, it's been really fun to work with you and to work with the Sirens and to build literally from the ground up this multi-tiered city built on an oasis out in the desert, filled with magical water and Emerald Cabal darkness and fiends and artists and statues,
Politics.
and politics.
Politics.
I love faction play.
Yeah.
Faction play is really fun for me, and so we have a fame and faction tracker within the campaign.
Okay.
I really enjoy Vampire the Masquerade, and so for me to really lean into how these factions interact, if you ally yourself too much with one faction, it will then affect your relationships with other NPCs and characters. And so we have the ability for the 4 primary factions within the city for the game master and the players to be able to track how they're actually doing with these different factions, and really have player agency have an effect on how the environment reacts to the players. And so that's been really fantastic to lean into.
Yeah, it's the consequences. I love consequences. So we want to make sure that no matter what path you choose, there are consequences, and the world's going to react to the players, or to the characters. We don't want to tell people what to do or how to feel, but we do want to express to them that everything around them is living and breathing, and that they can't just romp through. There's no rails to go on. There's a timeline, and things around them happen, but there are so many possibilities in our 20-chapter adventure.
Yep.
Well, if you want to play Vampire the Masquerade, I happen to know somebody who...
I know you also appreciate Vampire.
I love like cities that like kind of live in the background and kind of move on as the players, like whether or not the players would actually kind of move on things, like status trackers like that. They're just awesome, and it's just like, if you go too much with, column A, column B is going to be like, check these guys out. What are they doing?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's the whole idea of you're welcomed into this city either because you're a famous bard or you're not a famous bard. If you're not famous, there are a lot of boons. If you are famous, there are a lot of boons, and both have opposite cons, right? So, we want everything to make a difference. If you're famous, what does that mean? And how is that going to make complications harder for you? So whether or not you come in well known or not, it doesn't matter. You're going to have a really, really awesome time with this adventure.
Yeah, and as you were saying too, the settings that I appreciate the most are the ones that feel like characters themselves, and those settings can have different districts, different areas within the cities that are kind of like sub-personalities of the city too. And so we've really leaned into that with Salvata, where each disc is its own district, and they're stacked on top of each other, and they've been built over 1,000-year span. It's actually 1,100 years, because one of the discs, one of the 100-year cycles was a failed attempt.
Oh, okay.
And so after this time period, there's been a real evolution of the city, leaning kind of from gross material constructs into more of a magical, almost ethereal essence, as well as you go higher up these discs. And when players go to one disc versus another, they really will feel a lot of the qualities of those specific discs, both in the architecture, in the people that are there, and the things that are present, and the key locations in those discs. And certain factions have greater sway over different areas and districts within the city too. So if you are pulling really high with the resistance, for example, disc 3 will be a place that you will, there'll be more people who will, celebrate you. But if you are, again, pulling really high with the resistance, and you go to a much higher district, where either the Emerald Cabal or the kind of the hierarchy and the nobles of the city, you will not be welcomed there. And in fact, they will, potentially attack you on sight, depending on how far your faction is, or your faction rating is. And so that really allows players, at least in the campaigns that I run, and I think the campaigns that you run too, to know that their choices are meaningful. And that's why we play TTRPGs versus just watching an awesome movie or reading a book or even playing some video games that are just kind of a story on rails.
Yeah. It gets you a little bit more into it. That's one of the things that I kind of say a lot when I'm talking to newer storytellers or DMs. It's just that the city itself or the area itself is kind of an NPC as well. Like it's kind of have certain interactions that you'll have with certain different factions within, and the more I hear about it, the more I want to play it. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Well, it's really fun. So, the first 2 discs are very tourist attraction. You know, they're trying to showcase the rest of the discs. That we're proud of our city. We want you to see and explore and all this. I like Epcot Center. I love Disneyland, and so this is kind of a place like that. But when you have something so shiny and bright, it gets really dark, and you want that darkness for storytelling. So
Yeah.
things that shiny veneer. I'm from Los Angeles and San Francisco. He lived in San Francisco, and all these cities look so pretty on the outside, but the dark alleyways, there's a lot of things happening. And even further, you know, Santa Monica is really shiny. Beverly Hills is super shiny, and that just looks so nice on the outside. But there's so much corruption underneath it. So
Well,
we've leaned into that for the city, as well as the NPCs. What is your bad guy? How sexy is your bad guy? You know, you got a city of high charisma bards. Well, maybe the bad guy is actually like pretty charming. You know, maybe the nobles, you can't tell which ones are bad because everyone looks so good. You know, it's really important to us to make it complex so that you have to dig and investigate and unearth what reality it really looks like.
and it's probably one of those things too where it's like, if you're new to the city, you probably get kind of more taken in by the shiny veneer, and you don't know like which areas are, maybe you shouldn't go down this area, or maybe
Yeah.
you should, just stick to the shiny parts and keep going that way.
And people who maybe or who say they want to help you, kind of like in Hollywood and LA, like, oh, I can help you, I can make you a star. When in fact,
deal with the devil.
yeah, you're just doing a deal with the devil. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And that's what we have in this book too. You know, a lot of artists will sell out, and I hate that term "sell out," but it's a real thing. What are you willing to compromise for fame and fortune? Los Angeles is full of that. I've seen it. You know, I'm very lucky that my friends and I really held on to our honor, and you know, we did not do things that compromised our integrity. So, you know, putting that in this book is really important. Having people, you know, come to the players and say, "Oh, but you could have all of this," and them choosing not to or choosing to. And what happens if you choose that, right? Can you manipulate the person who's trying to manipulate you? You know, if you say yes to them, how will other people interact with you? And so there is no right way to play this game. We want to make sure that there's something for everyone who wants to play.
And that's where the kind of status trackers of like the different factions come into play too. Like, it's kind of like a multi-layered story, much like the city, I suppose.
Yeah.
I'm gonna kind of lean a little bit more into the D&D stuff. If you were a character in D&D, what type of character would you be?
We put ourselves in our game.
We have
Okay.
in fact.
You can see us. We have minis of us. My character is both in here and in Untitled Champions. So I am Lanya Nevada, and I created this character when I was 12 years old. And in the last bazillion years that I've been playing her, she's evolved because that was second edition, you know, and on and on. And now, as I played her last night on the dungeon run, she is a transmutation wizard, but mostly Bard College of Whispers. She's a spy master. She's fabulous. She's like Elton John and Cher and David Bowie and Lady Gaga, and all wrapped up in one. Oh, and Prince, all wrapped up in one. And but her thing is, you know, she's kind of like very maternal, and so she takes care of people, and her whole thing is do good, just make sure that we can get rid of evil so that people have a chance. And so that's what her spy network does. She's very underground. Just because she's underground doesn't mean she's bad. So she makes deals with people and is always for the greater good.
Yeah, and I play Vajra Ajay Viendra, and he is technically a battle mage, but when he is translated into 5th edition, he's a paladin and sorcerer kind of combination, and depending on how he's feeling, he'll gauge more paladin or more sorcerer. And I really enjoy this character. He has been kind of whisked away from his homeland, sent on a mission to go and recapture the stolen sacred energy of his people, and of his home. And this is a thing that, although he's been trained to do, he's utterly unprepared for, because how could you actually prepare to do such a thing other than going and doing it? And so he's cast out by the Mother of Mirrors, who is another character played by Satine, and we kind of do some interesting kind of meta weaving, and that's found in the Red Opera campaign and setting book. Um, their characters in that campaign, and characters also in Siren's Battle of the Bards. And he goes basically kind of planes jumping, going into hell realms, going into heaven, high heaven realms.
Mirror walker.
Yeah, being a mirror walker, able to traverse the many planes. Yeah, trying to reclaim the sacred energy from the fiends that stole it, and make some friends along the way.
So we made characters.
Yeah, we've immortalized them.
Yeah.
And other people are enjoying it, which is fantastic.
And we're actually pre-recording this, so if anybody wants to see Jamison's character in just a couple of minutes, tune in to the live show of D&D that we're going to have at noon. So for the next question, though, how do you prep for a game session as both a player and a DM?
Prep. That's a funny idea. Just kidding. It depends. It depends on the game. It depends on if they're new players, if they're new, if it's a new game, if it's a one shot, if it's a campaign. Everything is different. You know, I can do a charity one shot with 3 bullet points. And, you know, I can do sirens by pre-planning this whole weave, this web, and kind of writing it out like a story. Mostly, no matter what, I try to do a script. So I have time codes on the script, and things happen at certain times. That way I can keep everything within the time frame that is in that we have. So maybe it's a 2-hour game or a 3-hour game. I time code it because, like you said before, the world moves. So yeah, even if I only have a half hour to prepare for a game, I go to D&D Beyond, I get my links, and I put it in Evernote, and have my Evernote script, and I'm like, okay, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, maybe Act 4, depending on how long it is. And yeah, that's pretty much how I prepare. I've been doing this for a long time, and I can now create things out of nothing. So sometimes I'll be so late to a game that I will sit with my husband and I'll make the whole thing up on the spot.
While I feed you.
Yeah, because I'm playing with him, right? When I have more ongoing campaigns, a lot of times I will develop the story ahead of time. So I'm like, okay, I've got 6 episodes, and I block all those out. I have some key points. I know what the world looks like. Kind of organize it so that I don't have to remake the story every single time. I actually just show up, and I make sure that I have all my D&D Beyond links, because I love hyperlinks. Oh goodness. And yeah, that's how I prepare now. I used to prepare more before, when I was new, but like I said, now I can come up with any adventure, any game, like in the moment,
because it flows out of you due to your creative essence. It's been honed over years and years and years of being a storyteller.
Yeah, I mean, I went to art school in 1998, so was trained back then, and continued through multiple mediums of storytelling. But I do find that script writing was one of my favorites for game mastering. That was probably one of the best skills that I learned, and doing a lot of studying storytelling, studying, like, I say this book a lot, and it's still one of my favorites, Story by Robert McKee. Understanding, so if you want to prepare for a game, you want to prepare for being a dungeon master, learn storytelling, learn the hero's journey, learn Dan Harmon's story circle, and learn script writing. Between those, you prepare yourself ahead of time, and it's just so much easier.
Yeah. Satine did such a great job of talking from a storyteller's perspective. I can talk about from a player perspective, although I enjoy being the GM as well. For me, I try to embody my character as much as I can. from my own personal perspective, and that there's a couple of different kind of ways for that. I used to be a professional martial arts instructor, and so a good martial artist has you both know all of your abilities in your mind, so mentally, intellectually, but your body has to know those moves. Because if someone attacks you from a specific angle in a specific way, you don't have time to think about it. Oh, this is a showman attack. I'm going to do, this particular response to that. It just happens instantaneously. It has to literally just come out of you. The only way to be able to do that is to then actually master those techniques, or at least have a relative degree of mastery. I think that being a player is the same way, and we then have to master our skills. We have to master our abilities. We have to, master our character traits. And sometimes that's hard to do because we are playing maybe as a, an Azamar or an elf, or a paladin, whatever these things are. These are, made up things that don't exist, at least not outside of our imagination. And so I really try to dig in, and I'll play out encounters in my mind of how things could go. Okay, if this happens, this is what I would do. I would use my Divine Smite here. I'd save my spell slot. This is when I would use, this ability. And it's the exact same thing for martial arts. If someone attacks me from this angle, if someone chokes me from behind, if someone tries, binds my left arm but not my right arm, this is how I would respond. And we train it repetitively over and over and over again. So then once we are actually in that setting, we are somewhat prepared for this, this inevitability of when it actually occurs. The second thing that I try to do is I try to compartmentalize myself as Jamison Stone out of it, and really be in that moment that character as much as I can. That's kind of like method acting. You just are that character. Obviously you're sitting in a chair at a table or at a live stream, however it is, but to really, really, really buy in. And I think for me, having a traumatic childhood with some disassociation and some escapism, it's a little bit easier for me to disassociate, really be this character. But I think that anybody can really kind of step into this method acting. What if I were this character? And that way you can kind of let go of some of your self-consciousness that a lot of people would have when they're pretending to do a relatively silly thing of like pretending to be a paladin demon hunter. I think that sometimes people can feel a little self-conscious about being epic in that way, but there's no reason why. I mean, we're all here to have fun. I may be a paladin demon hunter, but you're a bardic sorceress, or wizard, an elf, right? And so we're here to have fun in that way and be heroic together. I think that letting go of our self-consciousness and really leaning into the experience in a good way enables us to be really good players and game masters too.
All right, so I think we actually already kind of covered it. Is it for different systems, or is the preparation kind of the same? I think we kind of covered that one already. But it's kind of different for Vampire than it would be for like D&D.
Well, not really for me. So as a game master, for me it's about storytelling. So as long as the story is solid, I can play this story in many different systems. Mm-hmm. Really, it's the mechanics that are going to shift. So to prepare that, I would just have to brush up on the mechanics. So when I play Vampire, and I've not been a storyteller for Vampire, but were I to run one tomorrow, I feel very confident that I know the themes. I know what that playing Vampire's like. Probably seen me on LA by Night. So it's easy to be like, okay, cool. Oh yeah, here's what the character sheet looks like. I need to know that as a game master because I need to know what my players are looking at me for. This is how the dice work, and let's just tell this story. Yeah. But also the stories that I like to tell are dark. So even though there's a lot of fun and games going on, I'm really mean. Like I will put them through the ringer,
Your players, it's so funny in Sirens. I've noticed this. Your players are very, very apprehensive about the call to adventure. They're like, I don't know if I'm going to talk to this person.
4 years.
Yeah,
I put them through it for 4 years.
It's just really funny to me because whenever you have your call to adventure, they're like, I'm not getting on that carriage. I'm not jumping through that portal. I'm not going down that alleyway.
You know how many portals I put them
through?
And now now I put a portal in front of them just to mess with them,
Yeah.
and they're like, "Why are you doing this? We know what's in the portal.
Yeah.
It is trauma."
It's always exactly. It's always that pain and hardship. Character building. I think one of the things that I would add for some difference between, for me at least, between Vampire and Fifth Edition is less about the system and more about the setting and the characters. So for me, I know the world of darkness very well, just kind of intrinsically. I have that construct. Fifth edition is a much wider, it's huge, and there's a lot of different ways it can go. Now, if we're playing mage versus playing vampire, it's a little bit different, right? But they're very adjacent. You can have mage and vampire characters go over, but the mage world is kind of separate, and they're like, oh, well, they're just vampires, right? We're magician, we're magic users. It's a little bit different, but it makes sense. For me, it's more about what is the character that I'm playing and leaning into that. So if I'm playing a vampiric character with the hunger, I feel that, I feel that inside of me. A paladin character doesn't have that. He has this maybe righteousness where he must kill, or defeat or subdue a demon.
So that's actually interesting because you've got shifter characters, you have lycanthropy that happens, and I just talked to someone today whose characters have lycanthropy, and that is a thing.
Totally, you can have it. You can have that in Fifth Edition, absolutely.
And it's really cool. I'm really happy to introduce you to more Dungeons and Dragons because there's different settings, right? So Eberron's a different setting, and that's a completely different feel than the Forgotten Realms, the Planescape, and you've got Dark Sun, and all of those are completely different. And I think this was so smart of Dungeons and Dragons. They're able to have so many different settings, and within each setting, there's different places, right? Eberron has a multi-tiered floating city that is absolutely gorgeous, but depending on what tier you on, it's like there's gangsters and mobsters in one area. You can do like noir, you can do like really intense vampire-y things in another, and if you go to another continent, it's different feel. And the Forgotten Realms has kind of done that. They're starting to explore that more with cities, but even like the different politics in all the different settings, they have something for you to choose from that smells similarly like other systems.
So I think it's about the characters that you're playing in the setting, the particular setting that you're in, and less about the system necessarily. At least for me.
All right, so this is an interesting question. So, what is your dream table for playing a game of D&D? For example, who would be at the table, and like, what do you think that they would play?
I'm spoiled. I mean, I'm having a birthday party on May 22nd, and there's about 45 people playing. And then on launch day, we had 6 people playing in that game. And then I've got Sirens, right? I really like playing games with people, so I don't really have like a dream table, because every year I meet new people, and I want to play with this person, I do, and then I'm like, I want to go D&D on a jet, and I do that, and it's like I am very lucky that whenever I meet awesome people that want to play, I keep playing with them. So but I think my happiest place is when we do couples D&D.
Oh, you stole mine.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so being able to there's something about like running a game for other people, right? And then there's something about running a game for my husband. And we've got our own inside jokes, and we can also get really close and cuddle, and then we also metagame like crazy. He's still learning. I feel like you've learned it now. Like, you got it. You seem to got it. And there's just something about being able to play whenever we want, and it's really nice.
Yeah, it's super fun. I've played at a lot of different tables, and I've never done just like one-on-one TTRPGs before. And so to do couples D&D on Satine's Twitch channel, it's such an interesting experience to be like. I've never felt actually so nervous for my character's survival.
Oh,
Yeah, it's really fascinating. Nor also felt so alone, but also felt so connected to the game master. And then the ability, like I know what like buttons to push in you to get like a certain outcome too, and so I know how to kind of like meta game the
yeah, yeah,
game
yeah.
as well. But then also, yeah, it's a really interesting experience. I really enjoy it.
I'm
I
so much nicer to you than everyone else.
I know, and yet not always too. But it's fascinating too because I don't ever really when I play with other people, I obviously want to do a good job and I want to make sure that everyone's having a good time. But I really I have much more emotional buy-in. I actually like really overly invest myself oftentimes in games. Much more emotional buy-in to my own character and the other NPCs in our game because you play the NPCs and the other characters. And so if like some random character were to perish in in a game, it's like that sucks. But like if it's you acting as one of the characters, I really
Well, you're
like
hyper protective of me too,
yeah,
so
yeah.
yeah.
So that's I think my current channel or not channel, but my current the actual table I want to be in would be this. If I could like I guess like it'd be interesting to play like with like the Buddha or something or like Lao Tzu. That would be fascinating.
That
To
would
see
be
how they
fascinating.
if I could whisk them into a gaming table, I would probably do that. We could play with like Abraham Lincoln. He'd probably be boring actually to play to review it, but like Lao Tzu, I'm sure would be a very interesting character.
You know, I
I
think
hear Abraham
it
Lincoln's is a
would
good
like
vampire hunter, though.
He
So
could, yeah, he is
yeah.
a
yeah.
vampire. That's true. That's
I think I would I'm related to Mark Twain. And so I think playing with Mark Twain would be either really awesome or really disappointing.
You'd be so raunchy and like just tell him like
Yeah.
be smoking a cigar like drinking his whiskey. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be funny. Yeah, yeah.
I'd
Samuel
be
Clemens. Yeah,
that's right. My grandmother's a Clemens.
yeah. So wild.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so he would be very clever.
Have you read the Ring World series?
No, I
Yeah,
haven't.
we haven't talked about that. So I love fantasy novels. So the Ring World series is a fantastic fantasy novel, and Samuel Clemens or Mark Twain is a character.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we should read that together. You'd really like
Yeah.
it. It's a great series. I love fantasy novels. So yeah, it's a fantastic one. Ring World series for anyone who's interested.
Thanks.
How has the pandemic changed your approach to games as a DM and a player?
Funny story. So I converted to virtual gaming a year before the pandemic because I was already traveling the world. So I wanted a way to game with the people I met in different countries, and I wanted access because I really didn't like the way D&D hadn't made that reach internationally the way that I wish they would. So I set forth and went out to a bunch of different countries and gathered the community there and realized they just want access. So I'd already been involved in that kind of gaming, and when the quarantine hit, it was it was normal except for the fact that I wasn't traveling anywhere. But I was running like a lot of Patreon games, and so yeah, as a career, it wasn't bad at all. It was bad on the part of my career that was, convention appearances. But
And mentally, emotionally. I mean, yes, yes.
I like people. But it was really interesting. It was the first break I've had in my life. So I've been publicly on live stream or some type of public forum since I was 18, and really started getting public stuff when I was like 22. So at 39, that was my first time that I'd been able to stop moving. And I was like, oh, and I can reflect, right? Oh my gosh, my childhood, my life, what is all of this? So the quarantine and pandemic allowed me to work from home and also handle my childhood trauma, a lot of it. There's a lot more to work on, but yeah, it was actually really good for me because I needed time to breathe and stop. There was a point where, yes, you want to have a lot of work, but then you have to be mentally prepared for it as well. And so I feel very fortunate to have recognized that my childhood trauma had caught up with me, and that if I didn't handle it, if I didn't have a moment to, then it would overtake me. And success is always a funny thing. What does that look like, and what does that mean? It never means riches. It means the ability to keep creating. So the quarantine allowed me the ability to reflect and find inside of myself a power that I could just keep creating and keep shining light.
Yeah. And I can answer from a creator perspective and a studio head perspective. So at Apotheosis Studios, um, again, I'm the owner, founder, CEO, creative director. Um, we had been fully remote since the inception of Apotheosis Studios. I kind of had as our foundation um, cutting what we believe to be cutting edge technology. So we were using Discord as our primary mode of communication internally from the very beginning. We had kind of toyed around with oh gosh, what's it called? Slack for a little bit. But,
Yeah, that one's always rough.
yeah, but then went to Discord pretty early on once it was made available when Discord first came out, and it was fantastic. And so when the pandemic came in, we were an international team. We still are an international team. Although it was my job as a leader to be able to reassure everyone around, hey, you will still have a job. We're going to do everything that we can to continue to make payroll and continue to make our art, make our games. I can't predict the future. I don't know how bad this pandemic's going to be, and it kind of there's ups and downs even right now. It's still very scary for many people. However, I can say we know how we make our art. We know how to make games. We know how to interact with each other in a healthy way. It's all already remote. And so we now have an opportunity really to look inward and create from that space. We are going to be relatively isolated from our external physical environment, but we still have these channels of communication that we've been using for the past 3, 4, 5, 6 years. And so we actually had a real surge of creativity while in many ways the world was kind of falling apart around us. And so I was very happy that we had already built the framework of how to work in a kind of isolated, independent way while still being deeply connected, utilizing technology such as Discord and other media.
Yeah, Discord is super useful. um, and this is actually a question I got from one of the fans, and it is, how do you come down after a particularly intense session? Like, how do you get back into your chill zone?
What's chill zone? I bounce around and I get excited and run upstairs and I'm like, honey, honey, and then I just dwindle out, and then and then and then and then I just kind of fade out. But it's really funny you say that. When we talk, I used to talk a lot about how D&D and BDSM were very similar. As you're taking someone on a journey and you're in there, you're in their heads, you're pulling all these endorphins out of them, and you're taking them on a ride. And now that you bring it up, I feel like the last year I've not been doing this. I can admit this. I used to talk about aftercare a lot. After you come down from the session, give yourself a half hour to talk about the session, talk to each other about highs and lows and your favorite parts and things that maybe you shouldn't have done or wouldn't have done. And I can admit that is not something that I've done in the last I would say like 6 to 8 months. And I think I'm going to. Thank you for bringing that up.
I always ask about your games. Yeah, yeah. So I try to simulate that as much as I can for you. Yeah. So Satine runs a lot of games on our Patreon channel, and then a lot of live streams and a lot of charity events, and other people's shows. And after a game, you usually are very high energy, and so I try to create a container. Sometimes I'm just relaxing, maybe writing, usually working.
The butterfly flies in.
Oh man, it's more than a butterfly, my dear.
A phoenix?
Phoenix.
A phoenix.
Yeah, exactly. And I try to hold space for you to share really the very exciting things that you've done for the past sometimes 4 hours. And so yeah, it's a lot of fun. I was also similarly going to say aftercare based off of BDSM practice, which is funny. There's maybe a reason we're married, and that I think that it's really important to be able to take time to integrate those experiences, and to do so in a safe way. And a lot of times that can mean pausing and slowing down, which because this Kickstarter we've not had enough time to do recently. But to be able to really relax into your kind of more and transition back into your standard reality, particularly for people who maybe have dissociated in the past, or have an experience with some dissociation, or even just kind of, I don't know, being in a fantasy realm as escapism too. Eventually you want to bring it back into your normal existence so you can integrate that experience in a healthy way. And I think that that's vital.
Yeah, it's super vital. So often, it's good to not be alone because you're full of those endorphins, and then you're with other people, and that's extra, and suddenly you turn the camera off, and or you close your laptop like I use, and suddenly you're by yourself. You're not alone. You just played with a bunch of friends. You'll probably see them in a couple days, or you talk to them on Discord immediately after. There's something about separating yourself from other people, whereas, and this is different. This is virtual gaming now. It used to be after your game, maybe you go like at Meltdown Comics. There's like a rock and roll Thai restaurant, and it was awesome. We'd go across the street and we'd eat Thai food for an hour, and we would wind down. We will make food together, and that's always a good one. But now that you can't do that, you have to take care of yourself more. And so there are some times when I get off work so late that Rhea's in bed, so I can't butterfly, and I want to be like over there. I want to talk about my thing, but I also have to remember there's a little girl upstairs who just got to sleep, and I have to be responsible, and that is actually hard for me. So it's like, how do I do that and be excited? Because I want to keep that excitement, and I don't want to replace coming out of a game with negative chemicals or emotions. So it is a little more complex with virtual gaming.
Yeah, with Vancouver by Night, we actually call it our vibe check, where we like stop recording and then we like hop right into like, okay, so how's everybody feeling? How do you think all the characters interacted and that sort of thing. Yeah, so it's
like vampire, where you are killing people, you're sucking their blood, you're like dismembering. Our vampire games, I remember back when I used to play very regularly, I would do like really like not heinous things, but like I don't playing a paladin now was like very like neutral good, but very good. I played a Brewhawk character, that was my main, and like I just would like rip people's heads off. Like it just was not really a thing, and killing relatively innocent people. I saw normal humans as food, not as humans. That for my character, I personally feel that way, and the character that I now am as my like primary experience in Vajra, which more reflects me internally. When I played that, he was a beast. Big jack dude, he had claws. He just would, and afterwards I'd kind of like glitch out a little bit of like, oh my god, like I remember one time a buddy of mine was like, you realize you killed like 5 innocent people for no reason, and like you had full like blood points, like you didn't need any extra blood, you just killed them. I was like, yeah, that's just how the character. He's like, how do you feel about that? And I had to check in and be like, how do I feel? I was like, wow, yeah. And like I had to explore, like, why did I why did I want to do that? Well, there are psychological reasons as to why I wanted to do that, and those are good things to explore inside of yourself.
Yeah, I played a Toreador, so I remember being 16, and that's when I started playing vampire. And we were out in the park, and her name was Lily, and she was an artist, and I hated her. I hated her so much. I didn't like the way she treated people. I didn't like the manipulations that she did, and eventually I stopped playing her. Like right now, the Miranda that I have, the in LA by Night, I love her.
Miranda's awesome.
She's so fun and so sexy. But Lily was like, we actually are very much the same. It's hard for us to play evil characters, but it's so, if you look at good and evil as selfish and selfless, there's a lot of selfishness in vampire, because you need to survive, you need to feed, and you're trying to figure out what's going on inside of you. The hunger is more than just this thing that's happening to you. It's a part of you, and you're kind of trying to suppress it. So yeah, now that I think about vampire, it was really hardcore, and I've played it since then. I have a bunch of LARP friends that play with in LA, and it was more fun, like as an adult. I leaned into the politics, which I
Yeah.
thought was really good.
Yeah, I unleashed a bestial side of myself in that character that I hadn't really kind of explored previously until much later in life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't remember if this is the term, but I was basically the keeper of the Elysium.
That,
So
yeah, it is.
yeah, so I was Sanctuary, right? Like that's the most Satine vampire role I could have.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned Miranda because I'm gonna drop some spoilers for LA by Night here. Like, I love the part where you and Mark Muir at the end of the one episode for like the outro, where it was like that. Like, I noticed that not a lot of people kind of picked up on this. That you made the deal with him that you're gonna stay out if Victor Temple calls, and when Victor Temple called later, Miranda didn't reply, and it's just like it's politics. It's something that something that Miranda would probably do, but something that Satine probably wouldn't. Satine would probably be
Yeah.
like, Victor, let me help you out.
Yeah, exactly. I am a hero. Then yeah, we should watch LA by Night. It's actually really really cool, and they did a thing that was season 2. They started doing those in betweens, right? It was the
I
end
think so,
season,
yeah.
where they had characters from the first season do little like vignettes to give spoilers for things that were going to
That's
happen.
cool.
Yeah, it was really really cool.
We should put our teeth back on and play some vampire. I'm down. I'm down.
Like, I know where my teeth are.
Yeah, I know where my teeth are.
I'm right here, guys. Yeah, let's I don't know, set something up, I guess. So this probably is it's actually for both of you, I would say, because I am a new DM as of probably about 20 minutes from now. When everybody sees this, what advice would you have for a new like dungeon master getting into D&D?
Know your world that you're playing in. Know the NPCs. Know your timeline. Know how the everything in. Know all the elements, and everything's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
And it's okay if you forget things. You can also remember them and put them in other places. And yeah, just breathe. It's gonna be okay.
Yeah, because I'm not gonna lie, I'm super nervous going into this.
Well, you are a storyteller, so
That's
you
true.
have the skills. It might not be your system, but if you can just remember, there's advantage and disadvantage, and things are hard. And if you know the DC levels, the difficulty levels to things, the people run either they do it normally or advantage or with disadvantage, and it's like that simple. You can play Dungeons and Dragons with no character sheets. So if you can think of it that way and make sure your players tell you what they want to do, it will help you more. And if you get stuck and you just tell them to roll perception for everything, that's okay too, because it's more important to keep the story going. And if you make a mistake, that's totally fine. If you forget something, that's totally fine.
Yeah. I think that different systems are kind of like different languages. So I have forgotten so much of it, but I used to be able to speak Japanese almost fluently, and now I can probably speak fluently while drunk.
Oh no! First of all, you don't drink. Second of all, you speak Japanese a lot.
For a person who doesn't normally speak Japanese. Yes. But when I think about my friends who are bilingual and like really bilingual, they are the same despite the language. Now the language, I can say things in Japanese that it's impossible to say in English. I can say things in English that maybe it's impossible for me to say in Japanese that a Japanese native speaker would say, but there are certain nuances that you cannot capture. And I think that with a game system, there's similar aspects to that there are certain things that are hard to capture, hard to translate, if it were, but the actual way that you use words, you construct words, and you tell a story is the exact same. So for me, a lot of it is giving myself the space to move slow enough and mindfully enough to capture my audience and to bring them in and to have them really have buy-in, that's all that's important. Whether or not, even as a game master, let's say I completely misread or misremember a specific spell, a specific character, all of those, that's really just props for the actual relationships that people are having, at the table. And I think that that's very system agnostic. And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. And a big piece of that is then to also play with people that want to have that type of experience, that don't want to be very judgy, like rule lawyers. And I think that there is a place for a very well-established table that really want to dial in specifically how things want to go. If that's how they want to play, that's fine. But when a new game master comes in, if people can't really buy in and lean into that experience of a new game master exploring a new skill, if people can't have compassion for that and have fun playing with someone like that, I wouldn't want to play with those people personally. I would want to play with people who are very supportive of me and who want me to succeed and will encourage me to succeed.
Yeah.
That's the type of people that I personally would want to play with.
All right. I'm hoping I do well.
Yeah. Well, I will be in your game. So.
You have a Jamison.
You got me on your side.
Gonna be kind of leaning on Jamison a little bit.
I do vouch that he's very supportive.
Yeah.
And we're coming close to the end of the time for the interview, so just another quick question, and then we can do some outros as to what you guys are going to be up to next. So what would your favorite system be outside of D&D?
Outside of Dungeons and Dragons?
Does anything exist for such a
what?
For me, Dungeons, until recently, until I was working for Dungeons and Dragons, I really looked at D&D as a system, right? So it's the D20 for me. So I actually played Star Wars, and during 4th edition, I played Star Wars, and it wasn't different for me. It was, this is what you roll for these things. So the other game that I love is Vampire, and Jason Carl's a very good friend of mine, and he ran me through V5 before it was launched, and it is similar to D&D in the simplicity of use. I love how they upgraded everything. So I will say D&D or the D20 system, and then Vampire for me.
Yeah, I love World of Darkness. I love Vampire. I love kind of the crazy, do whatever you want and suffer the consequences of mage too. Of do whatever your GM will allow you, but you can do whatever you want, but then you'll just suffer. And you may kill yourself. You may go crazy. I like that kind of wildness of the theater of the mind to the extreme. And I'm really actually enjoying leaning into a more solid metaphysics of the D20 system or of 5th edition, where it's really the whole notion of even spacing and minis on it, it's just radically
we haven't
different.
Even gotten there. We have 3,500 minis here, and I haven't been able to use.
It's just radically, and for me, it's a LARPer too. It's that you get into place, but it's very different. I think I would love to, and I'm in no rush to, but I would love to be part of a creative team that creates a system that was able to incorporate all of those things, and then even potentially lean on augmented reality too. Mm-hmm. I think that there's some really interesting things that are hopefully going to be coming in AR, particularly augmented reality. And so I look to the future fondly, at least in my imagination, of what might be possible.
I do want to bring up to I just remembered that I love so much. Okay, so a lot of this specific game helped me become a really good dungeon master, and that's 10 Candles. There's elements of 10 Candles where you go around, and I remember there are dice. It's been a few years since I've used this, but it's 10 candles, and time passes, things die, but basically by the end of the candles, everyone's dead. You already know that everyone's going to die.
Yeah.
but you still hold on to that human hope. It's so funny. And I love the world building where you go around the table and the players add to the world. I love that so much. So 10 Candles is amazing. There's also another one called Over the Edge by Jonathan Fleet. And this one is, well, he's updated the rules and such, but I was introduced to this by Keith Baker. It was one of those, like, we'd been up for 3 days working on CCD 20, sleeping on my couch, and we'd just gotten done our like second CCD 20, Celebrity Charity 20. And we were high on life, and just like, we worked so hard. And then we realized we don't want to sleep. Let's keep playing, because we're mindful that way. And he whips out this book, and he's like, let's play this game. And so instead of using dice, every time I wanted to do something, and it was kind of like, the world is kind of like Fringe, which is one of my favorite TV shows. I love this sci-fi thing. And anytime I wanted to do anything, I was playing a Doctor Who character, he would pick words out of this book, and then I would have to use them in a sentence. And that would be how, and you have to do it fast too. So if I was really poor at putting them into a sentence, then maybe the thing's not going to succeed. But if I'm good at it, then the thing will succeed. And so having that instead of dice was so unique and so fun for me that I think that's going to be one of my favorite gaming experiences, like, ever.
All right. So, sorry. I think we're pretty much done with the interview portion. So we'll do like a quick outro for both of you. Like, this is going to be airing on Sunday. So what do you guys have coming up next?
Sirens, yes,
Sirens.
Sirens Battle of the Bards.
Sirens.
Yeah. So our Kickstarter is still live.
The link is over there in the chat.
Yeah, so please, everyone go and take a look at our Kickstarter. Watch our Kickstarter video. We had an amazing time building this campaign and setting. We have a lot of amazing add-ons, and yeah, we've created a wonderful book and story as gamers, as bards, as artists for you. You don't have to be a bard to enjoy this campaign or setting.
Yeah, and the campaign, or the Kickstarter campaign, goes until my birthday, May 22nd, and I'm running an epic on Ray's channel for my birthday. It's like I'm gonna need you to like be like my coach and like water spray or whatever. But yeah, it's gonna be 7 tables. It's gonna be a really awesome way to end this really wild Kickstarter. So stay tuned.
Bardbook.com.
Thebardbook.com.
But the link is over here.
The link is over there. Yeah. All right. And I am Storyteller Steve. So we are going to hop over to the D&D game in just a couple minutes with Jamison.
I'm excited.
Myself in the DM seat. So yeah, we will see you in a couple minutes. Thanks again, both of you, for doing the interview. This is awesome. I know you're super busy with Sirens and stuff, and just getting all of the amazingness out. That is, like, I just can't wait to play. Oh my god. So we will see you in a few minutes, and